Hey everybody, welcome to this week's Say Report. I am your host, Sejohn, along with my host companion, Devon Decker.
I'm Devon Decker.
Hey, look at that. And we're both here this week. Do we have we should have like a spiel at the beginning of every episode, just in case we have new listeners, right? Like, what is it that we do? Like, we should think of a really good, quick way of saying that. Maybe off mic sometime.
This is the perfect time to do like production notes on our
Yeah.
podcast. Is
Yeah,
in the
yeah, yeah.
first minute of said podcast. Welcome to the Say Report, a podcast about everything. I'm your
There we go.
host Devon Decker, and joining me, Sejohn Sarowick.
Yeah, hey there. And see, now I don't see like a podcast about everything doesn't really cover it though, because like
Well, it
we
does.
talk.
Unfortunately, that's it. Literally covers everything.
But yeah, we talk a little bit about everything. We focus on movies, video games, and whatnot because that's the fun part of life. But we talk
You
about other stuff
focus
too.
on that stuff. I do. I censor a lot of the darkness that's inside of me. I'll be completely honest with you.
Oh, man.
Before we go much further into this, if you listen to last week's episode, I talked about the Ultimate Gamer Challenge at RWX, and I do have just one correction, and that is I talked about rockets only in GoldenEye. That's not a mode. That was my misunderstanding of what was told to us. There is rockets mode, where there is a rocket launcher, and then heavy artillery. So I just wanted to say I'm sorry that I don't know anything about GoldenEye, the third game that I owned for Nintendo 64, but one that I never really had a particular affinity for.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, no, and this goes back to what I was trying to say is we want to keep things happy and fun this week after last week's episode, which so that's why we decided on a little bit of a weird topic. Devin, I don't even know how to intro this one.
Well, what we're going to be talking about, the main bulk of this episode, is going to be about a film called The Little Mermaid. Now, I know you're out there. You're probably Generation DuckTales, and you're saying to yourself, I know The Little Mermaid. Ariel, Sebastian, Flounder, that seagull, was it Scuttle?
Or you might be the hipster out there that's like, well, I know everybody else is thinking about Ariel Sebastian, but I'm thinking about Hans Christian Andersen and all of the original versions of where every step she takes feels like she's stepping on glass. That like.
Ironically, a lot of people don't know this. The Annie Lennox song "Walking on Broken Glass," direct reference to Hans Christian Andersen's "The Little Mermaid."
I don't have the willpower to figure out whether or not that's a joke.
I mean, it's not true, but I don't know if it's a joke. And that's the most important thing to know about the Say Report:
Oh
is the
man.
things we say, they might not be true and they might not be funny, but we're gonna say them.
See, now that is a more apt description of our show. See, there we go.
So there were currently 3 live action adaptations of Hans Christian Andersen's The Little Mermaid story that were in the works. And the
Okay.
first to come out and grace our world is the one that we're going to be talking about once we get to the meat and potatoes portion of this episode of the Say Report. But it really wouldn't be an episode of the Say Report if we didn't have our amuse-bouche.
Yeah, well, so go ahead, Devin. There's some stuff you wanted to talk about first, because I got something I want to talk about first.
Well, I'd like to hear what you got. I
I have
mean,
another. Well, because I didn't want to let Disney get away from us completely this episode, I found myself watching a very peculiar Disney movie this morning, which turned out to not be a Disney movie, but there is a Disney movie. What do you know about Russian film, Devin?
not as much as you'd think.
Yeah.
Surprisingly,
Well, I just discovered that there is a Russian leg of Disney that has produced to date 2 full-length Russian Disney films that probably won't ever make it over here, or if they do, they'll be the straight-to-DVD market. The first of which is eluding me right now, but the second one is called either The Last Warrior or The Last Night, depending on what they decide to translate the Russian as once it comes over here. They haven't actually settled on it yet, but in 2019, there's going to be a full-on release of this movie over here. And it is it is this wonderful live action Disney movie that you've come to expect, except like Russian. Like it's the weirdest thing. You should go out the preview is available. Last Warrior is I think the big title that's out going around right now.
that's the better
But
title.
Well, the
Between the
problem
two
with that
titles you pitched.
the problem with that is that there is already a Russian fantasy movie more on the level of like a Game of Thrones called The Last Warrior that is very dark. Hence, the 20 minutes of a movie I watched today thinking, this is a rather violent Disney film, to realize it wasn't the Disney film. So that might be why they can't use that one as much as that's the one they wish they could use. So I believe it's probably going to end up settling on the latter of the two names. But yeah, so if you go out and find The Last Night today, um the preview for it, you watch it, and it looks delightful. I would say it looks better than most of the live action Disney fare that Disney itself has put out in the last 10 years. Like, they were responsible for Jack and the Beanstalk, right? Weren't they? Or was that somebody else?
Jack the Giant
Jack the
Slayer.
Giant Slayer or
Yeah.
something like that. Yeah, and like Prince of Persia and those in that like. But this looks like this is going to be like a really fun version of that sort of stuff, but it's all Russian fairy tales and folk tales. So you watch the preview and it looks phenomenal. There's just all sorts of cool creatures and stuff that we don't normally get to really see over here, or at least versions of these creatures that we don't normally get to see. We have very stock standard Disney versions of things like trolls and dwarves, right? But you can't get away with that if you're focusing so much in Russian literature. But I will say that it looks like it is pretty heavily researched too, which is also kind of rare for Disney. Usually we get like, I mean, even going as far back as Snow White, we get very toned down versions of those. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what the Russians can do. But yeah, I found myself down this really weird black hole. Black hole.
Black
A
hole.
rabbit hole. I don't want to call it a black hole because I'm super excited. This rabbit hole of Russian film that like it's just Disney. It's just Disney Russia. They've got also a Disney Italy and a Disney France, which those two don't surprise me as much as them delving into this market. I guess the thing that really surprises me about it is how much they seem to be okay letting it be its own thing. Like not being like let's produce Russian films to bring to America, but like literally let's just produce Russian films for the Russian market. And that's actually a really interesting twist for a company as big as Disney, as global as Disney.
I mean, you say that, but like, think of Touchstone Pictures. Like the
Mm-hmm.
Mighty Ducks movies. I mean, the first Mighty Ducks is a Touchstone picture, and then like they sanded off all the rough edges, got rid
Mm-hmm.
of Joss Ackland because every kid in the '90s only sees him as the bad guy from Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. I can't like it's like Nomalis or like something like that. You
Yeah.
only look at him and see either diplomatic immunity or the bad guy from Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. So they got
Right.
him out of there. They're like, screw that. We're gonna replace Hans.
He shows up, doesn't he? Oh,
No,
the character
no,
shows up,
the
but
character
the
is not
actor.
in it. No, his brother. Hans went back to the
Oh,
old country to
that's
see their mother.
right. That's how they redo it. They recast it. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But then he's back in the third movie to have that moment, spoilers for the Mighty Ducks 3, the weakest of the trilogy, where Charlie gets mad at him and then he dies. Because a kid can only learn a lesson about regret and forgiveness if they never get to forgive someone who died.
Yep. Yeah. It's the Disney thing. There has to be
It's
a
that Disney
parental
thing.
unit that passes away that gives them some grounding or like right to be sad, I guess, for the rest of the movie. Like it's a really weird hook that is again in every Disney movie. Yeah.
But then also the drive to like power through that sadness.
Right, right.
It's very
Um,
strange. It's a thing. But you think about all those movies that like Disney had a hand in, but under different titles and names. So you telling me that they're like digging deep into the Russian market does not surprise me. Especially when if you go through, Disney has their fingers connected to a film that releases every month.
Oh yeah.
And that is the coolest thing to
but
me about the company.
But I think, yeah, well, cool and scary, right?
Yeah.
But I think one of the things that's really surprising me is exactly what you're talking about with things like the Mighty Ducks, or I mean, we can even talk about one of my favorite ones of all time, Nightmare Before Christmas. How that started off as not a Disney movie either, Touchstone as well, I believe, actually. And then they went in and but what they do is they grab those franchises and there's literally a word for this now. They Disneyfy everything, right? They sand the rough edges off. They let these things kind of become these more family friendly fare. If it's something like Nightmare Before Christmas, maybe they even like go in and completely recast roles and things like that, which is a shame because you do lose something in those scenes. But like you're saying with the uncle, I kind of for what those movies are, no harm, no foul, did not miss the old man.
Okay, well, I'm just gonna be straight with you.
You know who
First of all,
you
he's not an uncle. He's just the dude who owns the skate shop.
that yeah, but he is like in that very fairy tale sense, like he is very much a father figure, a grandfather figure to
He's a
Charlie.
grandfather figure because Gordon Bombay is his father figure.
Right. Well, and he's a father figure to Gordon, though. There's also a lot of that in the
Yeah,
first movie.
exactly.
Yeah,
Oh,
but that's
dude,
who you miss in those movies, Gordon.
I want to cut together a supercut of the Mighty Ducks movies with
Hmm?
George Michael's father figure. That's
Oh
that's my new
God.
goal.
But what it looks like with this particular movie is that they're getting in on the ground level to let a market make a film. It's not like even with the Studio Ghibli stuff, the early ones where they were just kind of going over, and then the only part they were really having a hand in was just kind of the translations, right? The casting for the
Yes.
translations. Like that's the big thing that they kind of had their hand in, but that was it. This is like Disney from the ground up. It's just not being tailored to the American market in any way. Which, unlike the Mighty Ducks, unlike Nightmare Before Christmas, unlike all these other ones that they grab up, where they tailor them to the audience and like again Disneyfy them, and it doesn't look like they're doing it this time. They look like they're kind of letting it be like its own little weird thing. And I'm excited about that. But yeah, so I found this like weird Disney stuff, and I was just like, this is really bizarre. And I only got there because of looking at other like basically other versions of Disney films. It was essentially what I was looking for. Like I was trying to find like what are the Disneyfied stories that we have, and what are the like non-Disney versions of those stories that we have, because I think it's really rare to find a film that can kind of take a swing at like Disney lore, like right, like it's weird. And I think we really have to talk more about the Little Mermaid itself before we can really talk about it. But it's weird to me that you don't really see other movies trying to pay homage to the Disney side of things, considering how deeply ingrained the Disney story versions of these things are in our heads. And I think that that's something that's rare, because like you talk about these other versions of these other live actions of the Little Mermaid coming out, and I mean, they're either going to completely step away from the Disney thing, or they're going to lean heavy into the Disney thing, because you can't find anywhere in between. But I think that the version that we were going to talk about today tries really hard to find an in between.
Yes. And knowing full well that this was what our episode was going to be about, I completely stumbled into a reminder of something that happened last year, and that is a live action remake of Beauty and the Beast by Disney. Do
That
you
you
remember
forgot
that
about?
they did
That
that? Did you?
you completely forgot about? I know. No, I remember that they did that because I have a certain love for that story and a certain love for that movie. But I will be the first to admit, here and now and forever, that it is pointless and forgettable. It is pointless and forgettable, which is a shame considering everybody involved, I think, does like, gives 100%. I just think the whole endeavor is just from the beginning was just pointless and forgettable.
Right, which is important. So I think if that's going to be one end of the spectrum, I think it's important to establish that both of us feel that film pointless and forgettable. I was at one of those stores that bought up all of Toys R Us's old stock, and I found the tea set that they had produced for Toys R Us as a Toys R Us exclusive. And I'm
Man.
just like, man, this was not a good design from Mrs. Potts at all. This movie exists. My
Yeah.
God.
It's one of those things that I think looks better in motion.
Kind
No,
of.
I also, it's important to remember though that that is Disney doing that, right? And so like we can
Yes.
point to things like The Jungle Book the year before that or 2 years before that, that was like a phenomenal attempt and success at this, but again by Disney itself. The
I'll
thing
point
is,
at
you never see
Maleficent.
anybody.
I will name check Maleficent as
Yeah.
a film that I thought was completely unnecessary, and then I saw 3 times in theaters because it was so surprising and so well done.
Yeah, I agree on that one too. But like so Disney gets to play with their own kind of canon as much as they want though, right? Like we're always willing to give them that leeway, because they're the ones that quote unquote have authority over it because they originated it, right? So the weird thing is about this version of the Little Mermaid that we're talking about today is it doesn't originate with Disney. Well, the idea does, but then like none of
Kinda.
the but then nothing past that. So yeah, so Man, how do we go about this, Devin? Do we want to talk about this like plot line first or
I
what?
really wanted to talk about Spider-Man, but I guess that'll be dessert. So let's talk about The Little Mermaid 2018.
I'm purposely
The
not letting you talk about Spider-Man
Dude, I
yet
was gonna
because
be
as
completely
somebody that has
spoiler free.
not
Spoiler
laid his
free.
hand on it,
It's gonna be a good. It's gonna be a good one. It's gonna be
we'll
a
get
good
to it.
dessert of Spider-Man. So yeah, let's talk about the Little Mermaid and the fact that it is set in. I want to say like the 1920s, 1930s.
It has to be somewhere in that vein, right? Because there's not a stitch or of a car anywhere in sight. Everything is traveled by train, which means that it cannot be any
There's
later than like the
definitely
late
cars
19.
in that movie.
Where? Where?
Because the woman that they're staying with, the mom from Family Matters, she drives him to the circus ground at one point.
Okay, so there's one car in the whole movie, so it
Yeah,
can't be
I mean,
anything
I
past
believe
like the
it's shared.
1920.
I believe it's
Yeah,
shared by that town in Mississippi.
yeah.
It's
So
like
there's
the
one
original
car
ride share.
yeah, yeah. So there's one car in the whole thing. So anyway, it can't be anything past like the late 1920s when like
Oh, there's
everybody
also
had
that
a car.
truck that they escaped to the ocean with. Spoilers for the Little
Yeah,
Mermaid.
that weird moment when when they stumble upon slash knew there was slash conjured a truck. Yeah.
Slash time travel magic to
See, that
truck
truck
over to
doesn't
them.
count because that truck is clearly magic, so there's no reason to count that truck. But yeah, there's not cars everywhere, is what I'm getting at. The whole point is that the circus is traveling by train, and that they're like all this other stuff that's going on, that carts and animal carts and all that stuff. So yes, it's early. When was the original one written? Or when was
Oh,
Hans Christian's
Hans Christian
version?
Andersen.
We talking like 1890s? So I mean, but it's important because
Earlier
what's
than that, like
it's earlier than this movie takes place, but not much earlier than this when this story takes place. Especially when you consider the time jump that happens. Like when is the narration supposed to be happening? Is that like the 1950s maybe?
no, she's much older than the 1950s.
1960s?
It might actually be the 1980s.
Well,
Because
that would
she,
definitely explain the Princess Bride feeling I was getting the entire time with
yeah.
her.
Well, that's the other, yeah. It's the Princess Bride. I mean, okay. So let's start from the top, and that is this movie opens with some of the most gorgeous animation ever. Like I absolutely loved the animated opening, and Dale,
I
because she knew nothing about it, thought that the whole film was going to be that. So that was super fun when it switched to live action.
Yeah, no, I think it's super well done, and I think that there's definitely there's a style going on to it. I have feelings about this whole movie about how I think they do a really intelligent job in this movie budgeting. I think that
Oh yes.
they put money they put exactly as much money into things as they feel like and as an audience member that I need them to be like, "Oh, that's impressive." So like I do think the animation stuff is impressive. I do not want to downplay this one bit because I think you're right. I think the fact that it opens up on this, first of all, I no hint that that was what it was gonna be like when I first came into this movie, right? Like the little that I had known about it, animation was not what I was expecting. So there was even a moment where I thought maybe I put the wrong movie on. But
And then
like
they
so like
started speaking Russian, and I knew it was the right one.
um well, this is the problem when I have to do things this way to find these movies, guys. You want me to see your movie, make it accessible to me, people, everybody.
I can't disagree. We did try reaching out to the. I mean, you're in the middle of nowhere now. The fact that I could see this movie blows my mind. The fact that I
Yeah,
went to a theater and saw it not once but twice literally blows my mind.
I mean, and it is production wise, they are partnered with AMC theaters and then Netflix. So I'm guessing the reason that it's probably not in every theater around me is that Netflix is going to throw it up there before Christmas sometime, and it'll be like a big quote unquote Netflix original, like they do. And maybe that's the way that everybody will get to see it the right way, and I will watch it the right way once I have access to it. The problem was I didn't have any access, but so this movie comes on and it's animated, and I'm completely like blown away by that thought. But I will say that like don't go in. I don't want to trick people into going in thinking that they're going to see like a Pixar style film to open this up. Like it's still
No, it's
the budget still
watercolor.
shows.
I'm going to be honest. It's
The
watercolor.
budget, well, right, it's watercolor, and that's fine. Watercolor can still look beautiful, and like if the money is spent on it, like you can see where the line is every single moment. Like the animation in the beginning, the CGI that we get to later on in the movie, some of the scenes with them in the countryside.
Some
There's a
of
couple of
just the
weird moments.
production. The
There's a
production
couple of
itself,
moments
it's,
where
it's
you're
one of
just
those
like,
moments where, like, I remember when I saw Fanboys in theaters,
yeah, yeah.
and we started playing the "There's a Boom," because that movie, it's a labor of love. The movie Fanboys, and when we saw it, very similar to how I saw The Little Mermaid, like we counted boom mics and just
Yeah.
like errors because one or two, it's like it's okay, but then once it's happening almost every scene, it becomes a game, and that's
Yeah.
unfortunate. But I mean, this movie, I didn't count a single boom, but it just had that same sort of like
Well, you know what
guerrilla
it was for me?
style.
And it was they're in front of a screen. And I don't even mean a green screen because that might not even they might not have even gone that far with the technology. There literally looked like there were moments where they were in front of 1940s, 1950s style moving screen behind the actor on a stage so that it looks like they're in a different place. Like there was a couple of those moments where I was just like, "Oh, okay. They didn't need to spend any more money than this to get the point across, so why would they save that money for things like the animation, like the CGI, like even even like the level of acting, like really really good all around. Couple of moments here or there where there were definitely people where I was like, oh, you're a friend of the producer, or like something to that effect. But
Jo
all
Marie Payton
around,
was in the film. Jo Marie Payton, the original mother from Family Matters, whose performance in Perfect Strangers spun out into Family Matters, is there, and she is enough for me.
so, and this is where I can maybe drop a little bit of my excitement about like the guy that produces this and the company that works on these. What they do, and this goes back to the budget thing, is they figure out exactly where they need to spend their money. That character just important enough that it was worth it for them to bring in their named actor for that, right, or actress for that. And so I'm super excited because they clearly know where to do that, right? Next movie that they're hoping to do, that, as far as I can tell, are in the process of making Anastasia. Guess who their big get is for that?
Oof, I don't know. Is it Kelsey
Brandon
Grammer?
Routh. They got Brandon Routh to play the prince in that movie.
That's awesome.
Isn't that nuts?
That's
He gets,
crazy. I
yeah, he
love
gets to play
Brandon Routh.
Christopher.
You know what?
Yeah, yeah,
Time out. Devon Decker endorsing Brandon Routh. I
yeah,
liked him
yeah,
in
yeah.
Partners. I like him in Scott Pilgrim. I even liked him in Superman Returns. I like
Yeah,
the
and
guy.
so like when he shows up, he puts in the work, right? But he's exactly on this level of like, oh yeah, you got a little bit of extra cash, you cast somebody like Brandon Routh to come in and pick up this role.
You
It's
know what else is
like that's
crazy?
exactly what he does, and that's exactly what they specialize in doing so well, is figuring out exactly where to fit those people in.
There's also the Gina Gershon like cameo as
Mhm.
well. Like
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
right. They know how to maximize their money in terms of like casting that will make you smile.
Well, and it's not even just casting; it's everywhere, right? Like, so getting back to the animation that we were talking about, like they spend just enough money for you to be like, "Oh, damn! Like, I wasn't expecting this. This looks great. This is amazing." I would not go into it saying that it's going to be the next Oscar-winning animated movie, though. That's all.
Well, it's a live action film.
Well,
Of course it's
you know
not
what I'm
gonna
getting
be.
at,
I
though.
do. I get you. But it's good.
But yeah, so it starts off with this animation and this entire backstory for like a good minute. I can get. I thought it might be the whole movie because at some point I was concerned myself, but they tell the entire backstory of this, and it doesn't really falter from the Disney-fied version of the story until the last moment, right? That's really the only moment where you're just like, oh, this is where things get different because she's now kidnapped by the quote unquote wizard, witch, magical underwater figure that we don't know.
Just
Although
magical figure.
he does have little octopuses all around his top hat the entire movie, and I thought that was a good little nod to Ursula. As well as a gear with a dragon on the side of his head that after all of the other Disney stuff that we see in this movie and we know about the producer of this movie, like, there's no way that that's not also just a little bit of a reference to like, uh, oh, what's his name? The dragon and the Dream Master there, that from Disney, like
What are you talking about?
the very very first Disney like
Figment?
Figment. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, there's a Figment and the Dream Master though, and if you've ever read those comics or been on a ride 1,000 times like I have, the top hat with the gears on it is like the Dream Master's like go-to top hat, and so they have one on his that they never reference that has a little dragon around it as well. So like there's no way that's not like a nod to Figment and the Dream Master as well. Um, there's just all sorts of little cool stuff like that like you can't ignore. They're swinging for Disney with this movie.
Oh, are they swinging for Disney? I can't wait until we talk about all the characters from Disney who are in this film as like not die staff counterparts because it's not gender swapped, but like analogs. There are so many Disney analogs in this film. It's
Oh yeah.
crazy.
Yeah. So we end up in Mississippi after all is said and done.
Well,
Just
they
to throw the
start in
curveball.
England.
They start in England, yeah, and then we jump back to the story of the Little Mermaid and all of this stuff, and then you end up in Mississippi. These two people that have found themselves there for I can't quite tell why.
Oh, okay. Well, this is where I'll jump in. So they're in Mississippi because there are talks of this magical mermaid water that can heal everything. And the little girl, the I guess the adopted daughter of the main reporter, is sick.
She's a distant niece, right? Again, we have the Disney, but this is very Disney, right? We have the kind of not really well defined relationship between this older character. It's clearly like a paternal love of some kind, but it is undefined.
Right, exactly. She has respiratory problems, what we would probably call asthma today. But
Or
back then we
tuberculosis,
didn't have
if it was,
science.
yeah, like it could also be early signs of tuberculosis.
Right. So
But
she has
yeah,
one of
but essentially
those.
it presents itself as asthma.
So his boss at the newspaper is like, "I'm gonna send you to this story to see if this mermaid tears is real or if it's just snake oil, and who knows if it is real? Maybe you could heal your niece."
Kill your niece. No, yeah. So there's this weird moment there where it's not just his boss. You actually see one of the other reporters run in, hand the boss the newspaper, and like put him on it. So there's this weird kind of moment where you have to wonder, like, oh, are they like all trying to help him out, like get his niece healed? Like, what other reason could that all be? Like his boss. There's no way that they think this thing is real, right? Like the only reason he's spending this much money because he has to send him across the ocean to do this thing to go research something that
He
is probably
saves
not
by
real.
getting him an Airbnb
Yeah,
in like a lady's house that's in the middle of nowhere.
yeah, sure. But
There's
this is well, and we can't ignore the fact that if this is like 1910s, 1920s, right? She is also an African American woman that happens to own her own property. So like uh
Are you trying to say
she
sharecropper without saying sharecropper? Because I'll say
No.
sharecropper.
I'm trying to talk about in terms of like where they end up. Clearly, is not quote unquote the Ritz. It's a nice house, but you're probably right in that he probably saved a pretty penny putting them up in this house in this part of the country with this time with this person. Probably didn't cost much to put him over there.
They
But
share a
still,
room, Sejohn. They're
but
like,
still,
here's your one room for the two of you.
he does put some money down to send him across the country, across the pond, I mean, for like what is probably going to end up not being real. But I think that what they're supposed to be getting at is I think that he and the other people that work with him are like, want to help him out. And if this thing is real and can cure his niece, they're like, you should go check this out. Because like, if it's even possible, why would you not? Like, here's the money, just go do it. Like, that's essentially the setup.
Yeah,
Because
because
there's
people
no
in the
reason for
past
him to
were
be.
genuine. There was no Twitter where like you had to be fake genuine. These people
Right.
are like, this is what they have for entertainment. Their
Yeah.
entertainment is rooting for this girl. She's their bachelor. She's their master chef. Is whether or
Yeah.
not this young girl can get better.
Yeah.
And you
I
say
just
about
like
the money and like sending them over. I mean, transit across the Atlantic back then, because it was so frequent, it has to have been more affordable. Like they
yeah.
probably rode in steerage, which I think was like 12 pounds.
I don't know, man. You got to think about things like look at something like Titanic if you want to
They
talk
were
to
on
about
the
another pop culture
goddamn
reference.
Titanic.
He
They
he
were on.
where he had to like basically like steal
He
a
won
ticket
his
in order to get on
ticket
it.
in
Yeah,
a
he
game
won his
of
ticket. Yeah.
poker, and he's
Right,
also a
exactly.
time traveler.
Well,
Hashtag Jack's a time traveler. I believe it. I
but
100% believe it.
but I think that that's another very Disneyfied understanding of the world, right? Where like everybody in this town in London, in England, is like the town of London, is like rooting for this guy and like trying to help out. So they pool the money together essentially to send the kid off to go find the cure, right? Like I think that it's not nearly as overt as that, but I do think that comes from that sensibility, that Disney sensibility of it takes a village that we see in every Disney movie with the one parent home, right? That there's never just one parent. There's also all of the cast of characters around them also taking care of this kid with them, right?
Once we get to the magical part of this story, I have a theory that's gonna blow your fucking mind.
I'm excited. So yeah, so they send him off to Mississippi to go and try and find this miracle cure, and they pay for him and his niece to go with his niece, who at the same time looks like a 9-year-old girl and a 30-year-old woman. All of it, like every moment, like her expressions on her face were so. She has an old soul. She is so expressive for like a 10-year-old girl, and like there is very much an element to her where you're just like, man, this kid has some acting chops. And then there's other moments where you're just like, but it's still just a 10-year-old. Again, they knew where to spend their money. They found the perfect child actor that like not gonna be the next Dakota Fanning anytime soon, but she definitely holds her own on there. And so they go off to the Mississippi and they find the circus that, I don't know,
that is
has a mermaid.
Can we talk about the fact that this circus, right, is everything free there?
Yeah,
they don't pay for anything. Like, they're given the reading by Esmeralda from The Hunchback of Notre Dame. I'm getting to it. It's starting.
Let's do it.
Esmeralda gives them a tarot card reading for no money. Which, like, that's how you know it's a fantasy movie. Because there is not a single fortune teller or gypsy in this world who is not trying to make a quick buck on something like that.
It comes back to the "it takes a village" thing. She sees something "quote unquote" special in the girl, and so free of charge, free of anything, she lays all of this exposition on them, right? She's like, there's something very important about her. Oh, and by the way, you are going to have to fight for her soon. Like, all of this is just laid out instantly, and like you said, for free, because she sees something important in the girl and wants to help in any way that she can. We see her later in the movie do a lot of the same thing, but she's just trying to help because there's something special about this girl, which is what brings out the best in her, I guess. Esmeralda character.
The craziest thing is she also gives them a free pearl necklace.
Well, yeah. Like, I was trying to figure out what that was supposed to be. I was like, oh, pearls of the ocean. Like, what is this going to be? It doesn't mean anything. She just hands them a free necklace.
It's literally just like, money is valuable right now in the Great Depression. So here's something to like lend value to my words.
Yeah.
A necklace.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what it is literally this moment where you realize she's clearly not in it for gain. Like, not only is she giving them this free information, but she is also to be trusted because she's also basically paying them for helping them, right? That's all it becomes. It's just that it's hard in a fantasy movie like this to not automatically lock on to something like that and be like, oh, how is that going to come back later? It doesn't. So it really is kind of
a red herring.
It's an anti-Chekhov's gun, right? Like, so they go to this fortune teller, clearly Esmeralda.
Clearly Esmeralda.
Yeah, and then they go to witness a beast, right? The show where he is being attacked by
the coachman from Pinocchio.
Yeah,
it's the coachman from Pinocchio.
Yep. So now we get into a little bit of Beauty and the Beast and Pinocchio style. Also, I was thinking there's a lot of Peter Pan in this movie too. You get a lot of like the sense of the kids just running away from home, and which is also very much a Pinocchio thing in that moment where they go off to the circus, right?
That stays more Pinocchio with me though, because Pinocchio leaves Geppetto and joins up with Spumoni. That's not his name.
Yeah, you know what it is there was very much a Hook vibe to a lot of what I was seeing with the clowns and the balancing acts and stuff like that. Like that's where I think I was getting a lot of the Peter Pan stuff, but that's actually more Hook than Peter Pan.
The calzones, what are they called? When they're wrapped up. Like you can get it as a calzone, or you can get it as this guy's name, Stromboli.
Stromboli. Oh man, I was like, a pizzone? What are we doing?
No, not a pizzone. Really? Thanks, Pizza Hut. Pizzones were so good because there wasn't too much dough. I'm gonna give them the credit.
So you end up in this like essentially this Disney
It's the
like
Disney universe.
this Disney
Like,
dream world, right? This Disney universe. Well, but it's not quite the Disney universe. It's like Earth 2 Disney
well,
is what it
that's the
is,
thing. You know
right?
what it is?
Like
It's like how I would describe it is Walt Disney came through this fucking fair and was like, "Oh, these are all very good characters.
it's a
I'm
Shakespeare
going
in
to
love.
steal them."
It's Disney in love. So good. Yes, exactly that, right?
It's
Like we get
exactly
this
that.
idea where Disney must have at some point attended this. I almost wonder now I want to go back and rewatch and see if there's ever a moment where they focus on somebody in the crowd. Because I actually would not put it past them that this is like a secret like little like Easter egg style thing where there's a kid in the like do we hear anybody scream out Walter at some point? Oh man, that would be so
That'd be
good.
so good.
That is probably the moment where Disney would step in, you know, because
Yes.
I feel like everything up until now, as much as we've been comparing it to Disney stuff, they also part of the reason why I think that they draw their lines, not just budget, but also there's very clearly a moment where they step away to say, but this isn't the Disney version, you know, just to cover their ass. They're like, not that one though.
Even though Dumbo's mom is definitely a character.
Uh-huh. Yep. There's a little bit of Dumbo as well. Oh man. That's so good.
It's
But yeah, so we see the Beast, we see Dumbo, we see Esmeralda, we see, and then finally we come upon the Little Mermaid, which we find out pretty quickly she's not always a mermaid.
right, but I'm okay with this because they talk about in the opening how she's able to like why she's able to get her legs.
Yes,
And so
it's not
like
something they very much explain immediately that she has access to legs
and then there's the
on the fly.
beautiful thing in the film. She's like, plus all mermaids have legs when it's low tide. What are you reading books by Hans Christian Andersen? That racist? You know he had a problem with Swedes? He was Swedish. Classic self-loather. That death scene doesn't happen in this movie, but like it's one of those things where she says it so matter of fact that like if I had any doubt that she was a real mermaid up to that point, the way that she delivers all mermaids have legs at low tide is like
Right.
so that's true, right?
Well,
This,
right. They well, and I will give them this. Like again, I really want to talk about how the good stuff in this movie because I think there's so much of it. I think they do an extremely good job of sticking to their own lore, establishing it and sticking to it. And so like they so matter of factly say, oh, by the way, in this universe, like people can walk. It's just it has to be low tide, and then once high tide hits, right? And that's where the Cinderella aspect comes in. She turns back into a pumpkin once low tide goes away, right? Like, and so there's this great ticking clock element to a lot of these scenes where she's got to get back because once high tide hits, she's going to turn back into a mermaid. And we can't quite figure out the one mystery we're not kind of fed right away is why she bothers sticking with this circus because she very clearly doesn't want to be there. We see the way that she's treated and the way that she's shown up and the way that all of the creatures quote unquote are treated. So why does anybody stay? We don't quite know that yet. And that's when we also get to meet our team of the greatest non-Disney Disney villains ever. That's the other thing we meet at the circus. We already mentioned that they have
the coachman.
The coachman. That and this is also the tamer, the lion tamer, and he's got an awesome Disney scar on his face. Like it's the most like it's the most basic character scar, but done. It's so gross. It is so done so well. It is so gross.
So disgusting. I love him as a character.
Yeah. But then all black. He's got this great top hat with feathers
and the crow's feather. Like
with a crow's feather.
I don't trust this guy at all.
Well, immediately he steps out, and you're just like, oh well, okay, you're obviously henchman number one. like where's the rest of them? Yeah, and so there's this whole like group in the circus, but that's when we also meet
Dr. Facilier.
The ringleader, Dr.
He's Dr. Facilier. Like 100%. If I had to do an analog to a Disney character, and it's in Mississippi, and there's a scene on a steamboat, he is Dr. Facilier. With a little bit of the ringmaster from Dumbo. He's Dr. Facilier, but Latin, and he's wearing the ringmaster's outfit from Dumbo.
Yeah, one of the things that they do, and so the other thing we should mention about this character in particular is this is the introduction to my favorite person in this entire story.
And he's the guy, right? He's the
Yes,
producer of this thing.
he is the producer of this film. His name is Armando Gutierrez, and he is the mastermind behind this and a couple of the other films that I want to talk about. Essentially, like this movie is written and directed by Blake Harris, right? And so like Gutierrez is not the writer here. Gutierrez is not a film person at all, actually. What he is, he's like a banker. He has a straight up like he has a degree from Harvard. Like the guy is a genius. He's a financial genius. And so what he has done is he has used that genius to basically make himself very comfortable, worked up a little bit of cash, and then has decided, all right, now I'm going to make movies. He doesn't have any training in it. He doesn't have any background in it except just a love of film. And very particularly, he has a very big love of Disney films. So what we are seeing here in this movie is basically like this dude's wet dream. Like he's just like, I've got all of this money and I have nowhere else to spend it. Guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to make my own Disney movies. And so he started a couple years ago by making the biopic Walt Before Disney. It is unauthorized as far as I can tell. There is no Disney hand on it. So take it with a grain of salt. But it is a labor of love. And it's this whole story of everything that led Walt Disney to eventually creating like everything that he created.
I think it's called Walt Before Mickey.
Walt
You've
Before
called
Mickey?
it Walt Before Disney twice.
Okay.
But I tried to find that, and I'm pretty
it's
sure it's Walt
Walt
Before Mickey.
It might be Walt Before Mickey. It's not a well. It's not. It wasn't a well circulated film. I mean, I've got the internet right here in front of me. What are we doing?
Yeah, that's
Walt. Okay. Yeah, Walt Before Mickey.
because it'd be
2015.
weird if he was Walt Disney before, like before he was Walter Kowalski, and then he decided to go by Walt Disney, and he softened.
Yeah. Actually, I should take back this. Diane Disney Miller is attached as one of the writers. That's Walt Disney's daughter. So I don't know if they maybe used some of her book or something that she wrote. Maybe that's why she's credited. There's no way she actually wrote any of this, though. I'm pretty sure she's passed away, hasn't she?
I don't know. I didn't know Walt Disney had any children.
Yeah, she died in 2013. Yeah, okay. I thought so. So she died 2 years before this movie even came out. So they must have just used a lot of like her biography or something to write some of this.
Which
so anyway,
makes sense.
Yeah, so he's got this huge love of Walt Disney and produces this bio, and now rolls right into now starting to produce these animated films. And so in this one, he even then steps in as the lead villain, because why would you not make yourself the villain in these stories, right? Like if I were him, that's totally the role I would want to play.
That's the role. Like, that's the juice.
Like, yeah. I mean, like, short of playing the hero or the mermaid, like the role in this movie to play is the evil Dr. Circus, whatever. Like I think Dr. Locke is his name in the movie or something like that.
Yes, Dr. Locke.
But Dr. Circus. And so he makes these movies, and now he's going to be producing Anastasia, which was not a Disney movie, but you better believe that they're going to Disneyfy the hell out of it.
I can't
right?
wait. I mean, it was the closest to a Disney movie that DreamWorks ever got. Let's be honest.
Well, it was Fox, wasn't it? Maybe it was DreamWorks.
It was DreamWorks. Don't F with me.
But yeah, so you have him producing these films now where he gets to make these Disney movies. So what he did with this one is he went out and he found Blake Harris, who I don't know what this timeline is here. I don't know if he just had an idea for a Little Mermaid and this dude funded him writing it, or if he actually had the script already and this dude just funded him making it. But essentially it was like a match made in heaven. This guy had this really fantastic version of the Little Mermaid, that story that he wanted to tell, that had a lot of elements that were homages to Disney. So this dude steps in and produces it and just pumps more of that in there, and it just becomes this whole like project where they're just trying to emulate Disney without ever quite stepping on Disney territory. And so so now we meet this dude who's making these films. He's like he's produced a couple of other movies as well that are not so much in this vein. He's got one coming out this year. Let me see if I can find this really quick. Trick or Treat. Trick, and it sounds like that for a reason. It's Trick or Treat. It's a Halloween movie. But I'm pretty sure it's going to be a family movie. We'll have to watch the preview afterwards, but from the looks of what I could find on it so far and the little couple of clips that I've seen from it, it looks very, very, very family friendly. But it does deal with like ghosts haunting a house, and like this family moves in, but the ghosts are like these like quirky little like Disney kids. Like they're not like evil ghosts. Like you meet them and they're very much like honestly, this could be like a show on on Disney Channel from like the clips that I've seen in the story that I've read so far. Like they just move into this house and these quirky kids happen to be haunting it, and it's just all about them helping the family out and like learning to all live together under one roof, right? And like very Disney sensibilities, but I don't know if there's really necessarily like a specific Disney movie that they're really targeting with that one. But that's what's really interesting.
It actually kind of sounds like the Haunted Hathaways from Nickelodeon, if I have to be 100% honest with you.
Yeah. Like it's one of those things where I'm excited to see where they start to go, because they're clearly branching out from just the Disney stuff with things like Anastasia and this like Trick or Treat film. So I'm interested to see where they land, because if they can continue this idea of this Disney sensibility but start applying it to stuff that Disney's never touched, then they can get away with murder, right? Like they could do some crazy stuff that like you're just like, man, I can't believe Disney's not just producing this themselves, right?
Well, and actually, I'm talking out of my ass right now. I have nothing to support this, but with the fact that there were 3 live action adaptations of The Little Mermaid going on at the same time, I would not be surprised if the script for this film was something that Blake Harris wrote for Walt Disney, the Disney company. They passed on, and then this guy swooped in and said, I'll make your movie.
I mean, that makes total sense, right? Like, he would be looking exactly for that. Like, what's the thing that was made for Disney, but maybe Disney doesn't want to make? Like, I can do that. That's a genius way of going about it, if that's the case.
Right. Again, totally out of my ass. I have no proof of that. But it would also make sense that a lot of the homage already existed in there.
Mm-hmm.
It's the kind of thing that I could totally see being sold to Disney as a first draft of the script.
Well, it's funny that you say that, because I think that's another point where you really see the line on the budget, is the fact that that script did not get another couple of passes by somebody with a little bit better of an understanding of like dialogue. Because I think story-wise, it's really strong, and I think there's a lot of really good scene-building moments. But in terms of what actually comes out of people's mouths sometimes, it is a little embarrassing.
There's also some real pacing issues. When he witnesses Dr. Circus play his organ, so he can see how to open the secret drawer within the organ, which doesn't work. You can't have a secret drawer in an organ. There's too full of brass pipes to make the organ noises.
It's a magic organ, damn it.
That's true. It's magic. But that whole scene, like, just sort of comes out of flipping nowhere.
Yeah,
and I'm like,
it really does.
Okay.
I was kind of confused as to how we had gotten there. The
and
other
then,
thing is that there's 2 climaxes.
Yeah, but I'm okay with that. I'm totally fine with the 2 climaxes.
And I'm only thinking of this because you're mentioning the organ. Like, all of that comes into play in the first climax, in which they escape and like there's a lot of build, and they all get together, they team up, they escape. He remembers the organ from earlier, and they're able to go there and get what they need from that. And then all of a sudden, there's still another 35 minutes of movie. And so, like, there's definitely some pacing issues. Sorry, but you were going to point out another one.
No, it was going to be the fact that, like, that becomes the real Chekhov's gun. Mm-hmm. And it's just sort of weird how it's introduced. Yeah. And it's also introduced with, like, the other Chekhov's gun, which is him seeing the coachman treat Dumbo poorly. I'm going to use the analog names. I don't care. And it's just like, okay, so he's going to free that elephant. And that elephant's going to join the team, because you always need an elephant on the team. And while the elephant's on the team, like, just running blocks, he's going to go be the quarterback and steal from that organ, right? Because I've seen a movie before. But, like, none of that bothers me. And actually, you talk about how that's, like, the first climax, and then there's a second one. I fucking loved that about this film. The fact that they had this moment where everything I expected to happen happened. And then they somehow tricked me because they had a whole nother fucking act that they wanted to tell.
Yeah, and there's definitely ways to do that cleanly. I think that
they did.
It's a bad
I honestly
idea.
think that they did. I like, once that the movie got rolling from that moment to the end, I felt it was very clean. Actually, the only scene that felt super weird to me, first of all, it was the fact that a gypsy gave a free reading, right? Like, I'm just like, this makes no sense, right? This is clearly a movie. Get past it, Devon Decker. And then when he saw the organ thing, I'm like, what is happening? What is going on here? And also, it doesn't make any sense that, like, he gets sent to America because of these mermaid tears, and then they're sold out.
Yeah, that was a weird moment when he goes up to buy, like he's like literally saying, "Hey, circus folks, I want to give you money," and they're just like they don't even bother to like piss in a bottle and hand it to him. They're just like, "Nope, no more. Bye." No, that would never happen. They would have done something else. I mean, and actually, narratively, that would have been really interesting if they handed him a bottle of something that
Of
wasn't it,
just water.
and
Of
then it
just
doesn't
water.
work, and he's just like, this is a sham, and then he finds out that he didn't actually get the real product later, right? Like, how hard is that? We just came up with that in 2 seconds.
Right, exactly. It's stuff that would come up in a second pass, where it's like
Exactly.
instead of having this scene where they're like, "We're not selling to you," because it doesn't read as "We're not selling to you because you're a reporter and you might expose us." It reads more as "We don't have any more of the actual product."
Or we don't want to, yeah, for some reason we don't want to talk to you, crowd, like the crowd. Like there is no, yeah, there's no point where they
It's
acknowledge
not
that
specifically
maybe
acknowledging him. Like
him,
that
him,
comes
right?
afterwards. That comes afterwards where he meets with Dr. Circus and he's like, "So you don't believe me?" And it's like, "Yeah, but you're not the little person who was running the shop. You're not
Right.
grumpy. You you
Yeah.
weren't there for that interaction." Like, and
Right.
you could even have him like go to sell him the stuff, and then you have Dr. Locke come in and be like, "No, none for him. He doesn't
Yeah.
believe. He doesn't deserve it."
Yeah, so like there's these little moments that you can pick up on like as a savvy viewer, like you're just like, all right, like this doesn't quite work here or there. But man, it comes together in
You're
just
invested. You
an insanely watchable way, right? So we finally meet the Little Mermaid, and he has her caged up, and as we've said, like obviously is mistreating her. So this whole thing becomes about why, right? And we learn in this moment a little heavy-handedly because like we see him open the organ up and pull out this vial that has this like MacGuffin, this glowing MacGuffin in it, right? And it turns out what it is he's keeping the souls of these people around in order to trap them, or at least her soul.
just
I
her
don't know.
soul, just her
So
soul.
how does he keep these other people in check? I feel like
Well, I feel
there's
like the
probably more
beast
going
is
on.
there. The beast is there because he drifts into it.
Yeah,
Um,
his story, we kind of get
you
a
get
sense that
that
he's
he
kind of
like
trapped.
he got trapped by them because he had nowhere else to go, and this guy offered him a better life. But then like he doesn't fucking know any better because he's a dog-faced boy in the early 1900s. So
Yeah.
like, yeah, I'm getting food, yeah, I'm getting whipped, and I'm being made to perform. But I also have a semi-family with Esmeralda and the Little Mermaid.
Well, and we find out that the reason that he keeps Esmeralda around and why she stays with him is because she actually is much more powerful than we originally are led to believe.
Yeah,
Like,
she's
like
definitely
we,
there like a Madam Web character. I think that's
mhm,
just to
nice.
use it, where she's there to monitor the Little Mermaid and make sure that her power is not. She's lying in wait because, and here's conspiracy theory time, conspiracy unlocked to steal from Dale. Um, I would not be surprised if Dr. Locke somehow orchestrated the entire trip of the reporter and his niece to come see them in Mississippi. Because he's
Oh,
magic, right? So he sends the thing. He might even offer to the newspaper to bankroll it, right? Because he has the money because he can just conjure it up, and then he sends them because if this guy is truly looking for, as it's revealed, a mermaid born of man, which is what the daughter sort of is.
we learn, right? Yeah.
Because if he finds a mermaid born of man, he can get another soul, which will increase his power. It's like that's a little confusing, but I kind of love it at the same time.
Yeah, I see. So for me, I think it's a little bit bigger than him. Like in that scenario, that gives him all of the power, and I don't know if part of it is just I don't want to do that, or if it's just that the movie never really says that. Because for me, it felt like it was much more like he's just part of a bigger thing. In that she was destined, it's that again Disney idea of magic and fate, right? That she was always destined to find this mermaid and help her, right? And it just so happens that he is the guy on the other side of that coin, and he lucks out being the guy on the other side. Like it could have been anybody because I don't get the sense that he was like. I get the sense that he was magical before, that he clearly has power,
Oh, he's a
right?
wizard. He's a wizard. That's
Right, right,
established in the beginning
right.
of the movie.
Exactly. So like it was inevitable that he was going to come into contact with all these other magical creatures, and there's just this sense of magical inevitability that again is present in all Disney movies, right? Like it has to. It's in Disney in Disney movies like Beauty and the Beast. It's referred to as like true love, like that idea that the only thing that could stop this is true love. But what are the odds of that? Oops! Like every time, it seems like every time true love wins. So like I guess I guess the odds are good of that. And so that's what it felt like to me, was just that again Disney's sense of inevitability, that these people were all going to come together. But I
Well, all I know is
it's a
that
very cynical view that he has control
Esmeralda
over
has no control over it.
Right.
Because she is so happy that they finally found them. But I would not be surprised if this guy was not somehow searching the world, because he's also shown to be pretty powerful because
Right.
he possesses the soul of a mermaid. It's sort of like the MacGuffin in the style of Unicorn Blood, where like it can sort of do everything. A mermaid soul sort of makes this guy omnipotent. And
Yeah.
you get like this sense that like it's starting to weaken, or he is hungry for another one.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would have liked to seen a little bit more of that with him, and it's a shame because I think that they felt they couldn't do too much more with this particular character, because as much as I love Gutierrez, he does struggle a bit, I think, with the acting stuff. But you know, this is clearly him doing what he wants to be doing, and that shows. Like he very much wants to be there. He has some great moments when he finally like lets loose. I think they do a lot. Like you were comparing him to what's his name in the Princess and the Frog there.
Dr. Facilier.
Yeah, so there, I think that's a really apt comparison, because there's a lot of like really great subtle stuff in the beginning, and it builds to moments of anger later on. I think that Gutierrez, I think, revels in the stuff when he gets to finally like be angry and be loud and be like this villain character. I think he struggles a bit in trying to not be
villainous.
To not be villainous early on, because all he comes across as is just like a dude that they didn't want to give lines to. And that's and I don't know if that's the case or not. Like that might not be fair to him, because it might be just that they were trying to build the character in this way where he is very subtle in the beginning. But I think more of what you're talking about would have been really helpful to me, to be okay with the fact that maybe he was not so bombastic in the beginning, because if there was this idea that he had a better handle on how things were going on around him, because let's be honest, he comes across as not the best villain eventually in this movie when you start to realize some of the stuff that people pull on him. Like I honestly don't know why this gypsy fortune teller did not act sooner, because she seems to be one of the most powerful creatures on the planet by the time we get
but
to
I
her.
think it's because she needed to wait. The other important thing is the girl, who is really the true MacGuffin of this film, she is required by both the forces of darkness and the forces of light, because she is necessary to fulfill the prophecy, as is her uncle. Like they're a big part of it.
Right.
And until they show up, she can't act and actually free them all from bondage. So like to act too soon would seal their fate, because he could just eliminate her.
That's true. Yeah.
So she is sitting there literally biding her time until the pieces fall into place.
So she's aware that the pieces exist. How aware is she then becomes the question, right? A lot like how aware is Dr. Locke about all of this stuff? Like, does he know that these are the people that, right? Did he bring them here, or did they just find their way here and he just lucked out, and then again he's going to take advantage of this girl with the mermaid soul in front of him? Or did he orchestrate more of it? And the same for her. Like, did she realize exactly who they were that first time that they met, or did she just realize that she was just important?
Right, exactly. I think that when she saw them, she understood it, that like these are the people that I've been waiting for. She detected something in their aura, maybe the skepticism of the uncle. Like it was that sort of informed skepticism. Like really what they are, and I'm not to distance ourselves from Disney, but they're 100% Mulder and Scully in Distaff counterpart.
Nice.
Because the niece 100% believes all of it. And I don't think it's just the innocence of youth. Like, it's sort of a thing where, like, that's what she's dove into in order to cope with the loss of her parents.
Yeah. Well, and I will say one of the problems that I had early on story-wise was I thought they were trying to allude to the fact that, like, she was once a mermaid and now she walks on land. And so she was very well aware that all this magic was real. Once they finally started to really flesh out the fact that, no, she she's just hoping mermaids are real. That was kind of like a surprise to me. I was like, oh, so I was in that moment. I was like, she's been very self-assured this entire time that all this shit is real for somebody that actually was like apparently had no right to be. Like, it's weird how much she dives in and believes
I'm
this stuff.
100% okay with that because it's the innocence of youth that sort
Yeah,
of spurs that belief.
and I would have been fine with it too if I hadn't been for some reason believing that entire time that she was actually a mermaid and she knew it.
Well, can we
Like, I
talk
didn't
about the
realize
fact
that's what it
that
was.
there's the movie opens up with that beautiful letter that he writes to someone. I don't know who he's writing that letter to, where he's like, she's convinced herself that she's a mermaid and
Right.
her episodes are fueled by the fact that she's not with the sea. Like her fantasies have become so real to her that she's sort of justified it. So I would 100% believe that you fell into the trap that they set for you.
Yeah. Yeah, but also the animated story in the beginning that ends up being about the mermaid that ends up being at the circus. I legitimately, for some reason, just was under the assumption, probably because of what they said in that letter, that she was the mermaid in that story. So, like, was that what I was supposed to believe? Because if so, that was a weird
It's a weird
fake
bait
out.
and switch that
It's a
I
weird
did
fake
not
out.
fall for. But I can totally see how someone could.
Yeah. Well, and so
We
if
need
you
to
do
move
fall
a
for
little
it,
bit forward with
yeah.
this.
Well, no, I mean, like, and essentially this is it. Like, we find
Yeah,
out that
we're
he
there.
has her soul, and then they have to fight and get it back. So that's where the two climaxes come into play, where like I didn't realize that they were gonna have to keep fighting once they got it because they set that up as the huge thing that they need to do, and they do that. But yeah, then there's another 30 minutes of movie, which this is when it starts to get into a lot of the like really of its own lore and steps away from the Disney stuff because they have to by this point. They can't rely on that stuff forever because they do set up this whole world and they dive into it for the rest of it. You get some really good moments with the Beast and Esmeralda using their powers and to actually find themselves, and then we find out later on, like as we've already set up, that this little girl is also powerful in her own right, and that comes to fruition in a really beautiful way, like a really good Disney way without being directly related to anything Disney-ish. So that's what this whole movie is just all of this really good Disney stuff without ever being directly related to anything you already know about Disney, in complete juxtaposition to something like Beauty and the Beast, right?
Beautiful, beautiful uses of juxtaposition and the reference to the movie that I didn't remember existed until last Friday.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
it's beautiful. All the stuff that happens, like the moments, the stuff that they've established from the beginning, like the fact that when the coachman comes and takes the little girl, he leaves that crow feather behind because it falls out of his hat. Like there's just all this beautiful little stuff that when it comes to that climax, it's so enjoyable because you're so on board. Plus, that's really when they've started the CGI budget because Esmeralda literally stops time and
Yeah.
then moves it forward in a localized area for the mermaid, which, and you know what? If I'm disgusting in what I'm about to say, I'm disgusting. But the fact that they showed her growing her legs and they actually showed a bit of her pubis, that really impressed me from like a standpoint of like, wow, you guys went that extra fucking mile. Like you showed that little bit of hair coming in, and I'm like, I'm impressed. I'm impressed that you guys went that mile in your PG movie. I'm
Yeah,
sorry. I'm sorry.
there's
It's just
well, what it is it comes down to I think that's where a lot of the idea of these being freshman filmmakers really comes into play. And with a lot of this is that you've got a lot of people that really enjoy making film and love making film, and they don't have the voice in their head stopping them from doing things like that yet. You know what I mean? Because like they don't have Disney over their shoulder telling them you don't do that in a movie. You don't do that in a Disney movie. So like there's nothing stopping them from those moments. And so that's what and if they're able to do that still in a tactful way, which I honestly didn't even pick up on or notice, then like okay, then that's like that adds to the element of
thanks for
the
making me sound
of
like
what
a
they're doing.
weirdo. Thanks for making me sound like a weirdo for noticing. But it
I
was like,
think you might have made yourself sound like a weirdo when you pointed out how weird you were about to sound when you said it.
dude, that's true. I'll own it. But you know what it is? It's just one of those things where like it made it all feel more real for me.
Yeah.
Like there's
Yeah,
this
no, it's an element of realism that Disney wouldn't normally allow in a Disney movie, but this not being a Disney movie, they're allowed to do
they're
it.
allowed to
They're able
do it.
to,
It's
yeah,
like Ex Machina, where like I was surprised that the one woman was a robot
yeah.
because they gave her that, because I'm like, that's a freaking like detail that you think that like why would you care about that detail? Like it's just one of those details that like lends an air of acceptance to anything. I don't know. It's stupid. It's like a
No,
stupid thing
it's
that works for
no.
me
What
in
it
these
is
films.
it's something that beats a bit, against the uncanny valley. That idea of separating yourself from the thing in front of you because it's so clearly fake. It's a moment that doesn't allow that to happen, right? Because it is so real, it is so raw, it is so human. This thing that happens in this moment that you're just like, oh, like that grounds it in a reality for me that animation usually can't because they don't take those kinds of steps.
Thank you, Sejohn. You made me sound like an intellectual and not a pervert.
What is grad school good for if not that?
That's all grad school is for, right?
Yeah, it's at least one of the perks. But yeah, so then this all shapes up into this beautiful film that like I do want people to see. I want to make sure that everybody knows what they're getting into here. You are talking about a bunch of independent filmmakers in some of the truest sense. Like there are people that have a pedigree for sure, but this is the first time that I think all of these people have really been in positions of like of decision making. Like they've always been the people that have been there being told what to do by the likes of a company like Disney. But this is what you get when you don't have that company over your shoulder every step of the way telling you what you can and can't do. Is you get a movie like this, a little rough in some areas, but still fun, still good. There's no reason that this doesn't still work as a family film.
You're not wrong, and I agree. And here's the best part: we talked a lot about this film, but we didn't mention the best scenes in it, which are when he is interviewing the townsfolk and when
Yeah,
they go to a lavish ball
yeah,
aboard a steamboat.
yeah.
So even if you feel we've ruined other parts of this film for you, we have left you some of the juiciest plums to sink your teeth into when you watch this film.
Yeah.
And this film, I mean, I'll say it. You can script if you agree. This film 100% gets the Say Report seal of approval.
No, I agree. I think this is definitely one that I really enjoyed watching, would totally watch again, and I hope that our listeners go watch.
Yes. So that's it. So go see The Little Mermaid 2018. Armando Gutierrez is the producer, and Blake Harris, he wrote and directed it. Go watch it. And that brings us to dessert, Sejohn. You
Yeah.
thought I forgot, but I can't
No,
forget.
I didn't forget. I here's the thing is I do want to play this game and I want to play it soon. So like if you could
Oh,
promise me spoiler free talk, let's do it.
completely spoiler free talk. And here's what this is. I would love to refer to this game from now on, and once I finish making the father figure mashup of the Mighty Ducks films, I am going to do a bunch of stuff from this game, from the Spider-Man for PS4, set to Jump Up Superstar from Super Mario Odyssey,
Nice.
because all I felt the entire time that I was playing Spider-Man was that this is Super Spider-Man Odyssey.
Awesome.
It
That's
is
a
it
that's a
is
weird little
it's
comparison
a
I have not heard
weird
yet.
comparison that, but it does something like, so like what we could also be checking back into is Sejohn and I's hunt for 999 moons, a
Yeah.
long abandoned challenge that one of us is going to get there one day and say to the other one, I did it, and we're just going to move past it.
Mhm.
And here is the difference, and this is the thing I wanted to focus on this Spider-Man game. You can 100% it in one playthrough. You
Nice.
fight the final boss, and then when you log back into your game, it shows 100%. And that is my biggest problem with Super Mario Odyssey, is
Yeah.
that you need to beat Bowser before you can finish the game 100%. And maybe that's just me and that's just the way I play games. But the fact that I took the time, here's my best indication of what Spider-Man PS4 is. Yesterday, I sat for 6 hours completing side missions. I started at 9 a.m. and I went till 3 p.m. and I had completed every side mission. All I had left was story mission. And leading up to that, I didn't move on until every side mission available to me was complete. Like, I was able to do that. There was nothing locked behind a certain part of it, and the stuff that was locked behind it made logical sense. It was beautiful. It was this beautiful experience that, like, while I'm still fearful that if I ever play this game again, I'm going to get Arkham City syndrome. Because I wonder how much meat is on the actual story when 6 hours was spent doing side missions in the final act of the game yesterday.
Yeah.
And then an hour finished the game for me.
I'm excited if it becomes a little bit more Arkham City, to be entirely honest. I know that is a bad thing for you, but it sounds like they pace it really, really well, which is important for open world games, important for games that like you can go back to. The fact that you feel like you still got what you wanted out of it the first time through, like, that's important. And the fact that they could do that is good.
That is 100% important. The fact that I actually platinumed this game, something I know I will never do with Arkham City, because of just how much they're expecting from me as a player. Like that, and I didn't even care about the platinum trophy. I played through the game, I was missing 2 trophies. That's it.
Yeah.
And one of them was like, all right, I'm just gonna have to do this part that like would be a wall for me anywhere else. But it's not a wall for me, because I just sat down. It took me literally 4 minutes to do the thing that, like, I completed enough to get 100% in the game, but then they're like, but you can still do better at this. But we're going to say that, like, you understand the game by doing this.
Right, and you only have to apply just 4 extra minutes of work. Like, it's just a little bit of extra brain power. It's not one of those things that, like, kills you because you've got to sit there for 3 hours and figure out the exact way to get through this thing in this way, which a lot of the Mario Odyssey stuff eventually becomes, for me at least, is it becomes a lot of this stuff with the stars, or moons. Yeah, sorry. Whatever they are, you collect in that one. A lot of that stuff becomes just this mental challenge of, like, can your brain take this for 2 hours? And it's just like, I mean, maybe, but why? Like, that's no fun. It sounds like in this, it's just like, hey, so you were clearly capable of getting through this. Do you think you're capable of it being a little bit more challenging? That's fun. That's fun to me.
That is fun.
Not, yeah.
And that's why I'm like, it's why I am excited about this game. I'm excited for you to play it. It's why I'm going to stay away from any spoilers, except for this one. It's small. It's very small. At the very end of the game, you unlock the suit I wore for all of Super Mario Odyssey, which is when I've been calling it Super Spider-Man Odyssey almost the entire time that I played this game. And then like there was a hint that this might be the final unlock, and I'm like, please be true. Please just like make me the truest person in the world who saw what you guys built this game on and did it better and did it better than Nintendo. You did it better than Big N, because like, I am satisfied, and I'd go play it again right now. Where like, I don't think I'll ever touch Super Mario Odyssey again.
All right. Well, I'm excited. I am excited to play, and maybe by this time next week we can be talking about things in a little bit more detail. But I am super excited to hear you say all of this stuff, because I was already happy and excited to play this game. But this is awesome.
That's why I wanted to say this, Sejohn, because I wanted to give you like just that little extra push to be like, this is the stuff you're gonna love, buddy. It's Arkham Knight done right.
Yeah.
That as someone who's never finished Arkham Knight.
Hey, but that's telling. You never finished that game, and here you are platinuming this one. So I mean, I think that's a pretty good.
In 5 days, because this is like the final dessert. I ate a 2-pound cheeseburger this week.
Oh God!
And a pound of fries in 19 minutes and 37 seconds.
Ah, you got it for free in a T-shirt then, huh?
Yes, I did.
Oh God! I hope it was worth it.
Oh, dude. Well, here's the thing: we showed up at an event at 6 o'clock, and then we're told, "Oh, it doesn't start till 8." So, like, we had time to kill because we weren't gonna leave. We took all the time to get there. So I'm like, "How long does it take?" And they're like, "Oh, it takes about half an hour to prepare." And I'm like, "All right, half an hour to prepare, an hour to eat it. Yeah, that'll be perfect."
Oof, man.
And then somehow, just focusing on eating, I finished it in under 20 minutes.
Just 20 minutes to eat it and like 4 hours to let it go.
Oh, dude. But here's the thing. Like, Jeff was with me, and yesterday we met up for Arcade Pit, which was a great time, and he's like, how you doing after that burger? Like, I'm a little bit concerned. And I'm like, no, I'm good. I'm great.
Oh man, excellent.
So that
well,
was
I'm gonna have to do the In-N-Out versus Five Guys burger challenge out here in the next couple of days. So maybe I'll report back on that.
I can't wait to hear it. But until then, I've been Devon Decker. If you'd like to tell me anything else that I may have gotten wrong in the last 85 episodes of the Say Report, you can find me on Twitter at Devon D. Decker.
And you can find me at Siege versus the World and talk to me about some Spider-Man stuff because I think I'm going to start that journey this week.
Excellent. Will, be spectacular, man.
Thank you for listening to the Say Report with your host Devon Decker and Sejohn Serwick. Please follow the guys on Twitter and Facebook by searching for The Say Report, and you can always subscribe on your podcast channel so this is delivered straight to you and you can enjoy it every week. With apologies to your mother, we'll see you next time.